Welcome back to The Spiral. I'm Lauren Toby, and today we're going to nerd out a little bit in the best way, I think. The first two episodes gave you the framework and the reframe, right? This one is going to talk a little bit more about the science because I think you deserve to understand what's actually happening inside of your body. And I think that gives you so much more clarity on the situation as a whole. So when you shut down, when you snap or can't sleep, or you say you're fine and then suddenly you're not fine and you don't know why, right? I'm not going to make this clinical. I am not a medical professional, and I need to just say that up front. This does not constitute medical advice. It's just my take on a good deal of research and discovery, as well as my master NLP practitioner certification in trauma-informed coaching. So my goal is not to throw terminology at you and expect you to keep up. I am just going to explain your nervous system the way I wish someone had explained it to me, like it's the most important thing nobody ever taught you. Because honestly, I think it is, and I think it needs to be taught to us younger and in school, where people can be aware of their nervous systems, hopefully before they get to the point that so many of us are in today. So if you paid more attention to the diagram of like a plant cell in high school biology than you did this system that runs your entire emotional life and your relationships and reactions and your ability to honestly feel safe inside your own body, it's not your fault, right? Nobody taught it. We learn more about the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. Why do every single one of us remember that, right? But we learn almost nothing about the system that determines how we think, feel, and respond to literally everything. So we're going to fix that. Now, the first thing I really want you to sit with is you're not in charge. I know. It's super uncomfortable and really hard to grasp our brains around, but we walk around believing we are rational beings who make conscious decisions based on logic and values and education, and sometimes we are. We absolutely are. But most of the time, especially under stress, and especially when something feels threatening, especially in relationships, your body has already made the call before your brain has even gotten the memo. So I think of your nervous system as the operating system on your phone, right? Your conscious mind, the thinking, planning, reasoning part, is an app. The app does super useful stuff, but it runs on the operating system's data. And when the operating system decides to shut down or fail or becomes corrupt, or decides to redirect resources or enter power saving mode, the app doesn't get a voice. The phone does what it needs to do. So that's why you can know intellectually that your partner leaving the room isn't abandonment, and your body floods with panic anyway. That's why you can tell yourself in the mirror to calm down and nothing's wrong, but your heart rate doesn't listen. That's why you can sit there and explain your patterns and still repeat them, because understanding is just an app. Your nervous system is the operating system, and the operating system always wins. Now, this isn't a design flaw. It's your survival architecture. Your nervous system's primary job above everything else is to keep you alive, okay? Not happy, not fulfilled, not emotionally regulated, alive. Everything else is negotiable. If your system has to sacrifice your ability to feel joy, to sleep correctly, your patience, or even access to your own emotions in order to keep you safe, it will do that without consulting you and without apology. Your nervous system operates in 3 basic modes. And that's where things start to click with most people, because you've been living in these modes your entire life without having exact language for them. So the first mode is what we'd call like safe and social, right? This is your system when it feels genuinely secure, Your heart rate is steady, your breathing is easy, you make eye contact with people, you can play with your kids without like mentally rehearsing your to-do list at the same time. You can sit in silence without it feeling threatening. You can disagree with someone and your body is not going to treat the conversation like an active battlefield. This is where your best thinking happens, right? Your best connecting, your best parenting, your best decision making. This is the state every single wellness tool assumes you're starting from. And for a lot of us, we spend very little time in this actual state, right? And the second mode is activation. That's your fight or flight. This is your system when it detects a threat and decides you have the resources to do something about it, right? Your heart rate begins to increase, your muscles tense up, your focus narrows, you're scanning for the problem, and your body wants to either confront it or just get away from it, right? In the modern world, this shows up as snapping at your kids over something super small, or road rage, or that knot in your stomach before a difficult conversation, or mine where you can rehearse the exact conversation you want to have in the shower, but when you get in the situation, your mind is 100% blank, right? It's your inability to sit still. Your thoughts are racing at 2 a.m. You're scrolling your phone compulsively because your body needs the stimulation, but it doesn't know what to do with that energy. Some people say it's the urge to clean the entire house at 11 p.m. I wish that's how mine showed up more often, and I'm sure so does my family. But it shows up different in different people. But the key is that it is energy without a place to go, right? It's fight or flight. But unlike being, on the Serengeti where you can literally run away from the problem, that's not how things work in the modern world. So fight or flight becomes your body wanting to respond with that much energy, but not having anywhere to displace that energy, right? So then the third mode is shutdown. And this is the one that I think confuses people the most, internally and externally, because it doesn't look like a stress response, right? The stress response looks like that one we just talked about. Number 2 is that activation, that snapping. Oh, she's super stressed, right? But shutdown is what happens when your system detects a threat and decides that you do not have the resources you need to fight or run. So instead, it just conserves as much as it can. So it pulls the plug. It makes you go numb. It's foggy. The world feels distant, and you can't access your emotions, okay? It's not because you don't have them. You still have emotions, but because your system has moved them offline to protect you from overwhelm, you can't feel them the way you would normally in, that first mode of just safe and happy. This state is what we call the ashes in the spiral. And for women who've been through prolonged relational stress, years in a difficult marriage, chronic workplace toxicity, caregiving without support, childhood environments where your emotions weren't safe, this mode isn't a temporary response. It starts to become your baseline. You're no longer visiting shutdown. You just live there permanently. And what makes this especially invisible is you can be in shutdown and still be 100% completely functional on the outside. You can still go to work, make dinner, you can still hold a conversation with people and smile at the right moments. This is what I call high functioning shutdown. And it doesn't look like depression, right, to the outside world. It looks like a woman who has it all together. She's out there killing it. She's the boss babe, right? She's doing the things. But inside, she's operating at less than 50% capacity, maybe 15% capacity, and wondering why it all feels so hard for her. So this is where the science starts to get really practical and where a lot of frustration that you may have been experiencing starts to make sense. These three modes, right, operate in a hierarchy. Your system checks for safety first. If it finds safety, you get to access mode 1, the social, connected, super regulated state. If it doesn't find safety, it escalates to mode 2, which is that activation, fight or flight. And if activation isn't possible or doesn't resolve the threat quick enough, then it drops into mode 3, which is shutdown. The critical thing about this is that you can't skip levels. You can't go from shutdown to social connection just because you decide to, right? You can't think your way out of shutdown. You can't positive affirmation your way from mode 3 to mode 1. Your body doesn't work that way. And this is why someone in the ashes can't just go for a walk or call a friend or practice gratitude or stand outside in bare feet. Those are mode 1 activities. They require a baseline of safety that someone in shutdown doesn't have access to. Telling someone in shutdown to meditate is like telling someone who's drowning to practice breathing techniques. The tool isn't wrong. The person isn't in a state where the tool can work, though. You have to move through the levels. From shutdown, you move into activation, and that can feel like things are getting worse before they get better. You go from flat and numb to irritable and reactive. And you think, what is happening? I was fine before, right? We've been there. You weren't fine, though. You were shut down. And your system coming back online means it has to pass through activation on the way to regulation. And that's the ember, the awareness that flickers back. Emotions start to return. And they're not gentle at first. They're messy, right? You feel angry about things you thought you'd already dealt with. You cry in the car for reasons you can't articulate. You're irritable with people who didn't actually do anything wrong. And that's not a regression. It can feel like it because you went from nothing to being kind of cranky. And that can feel like you're messing up, but you're not. It has to happen. And it has to pass through the uncomfortable middle before it can get to the other side. Now, I want to add one more piece because it explains something that drives people nuts, right? Your nervous system is constantly scanning your environment for cues of safety or danger, right? This isn't conscious. This isn't something your brain knows it's doing. It's not deliberate, but it is automatic, below the level of awareness. And it's faster than your thinking brain can even process. It's reading facial expressions, vocal tones, people's body language, room energy. It's the way someone texts you back, and it's making assessments about whether this moment is safe or not. And this is why so many times people with a trauma history or someone who has lived in survival mode for so long can walk into a room and immediately feel uneasy without ever being able to explain why. It's why a certain tone of voice from your partner, even when they're saying something perfectly reasonable, makes your stomach tighten. It's why you relax around certain people, but then tense up around others. And those reasons, I want to say right now, are not always logical. Right? When your body has been in survival mode so long, it sometimes takes all of that data and creates an irrational output of that stress. So for me, it became what recently my son told me was claustrophobia. So I've always said for the last many years since I realized what my body was doing that I had claustrophobia. But he learned, thank God for YouTube, right? He learned that it was actually claustrophobia, which is the fear of being unable to escape. I'm not scared of small spaces. I'm scared of the inability to escape a situation. So that results a lot of times in like being in large crowds where I can't easily access an exit. It's being in a situation like a corn maze or a mirror maze or something where I feel like if something went wrong right now, I couldn't escape. Now, I've never been in a situation where I was harmed or unsafe in a situation like that. I was never trampled. I was never, in one of those situations, but my body took all of the data input from times when I was unsafe, and that's how it congregated them. That's how it consolidated those signals of unsafety for me. And for other people, it forms in so many different ways. And this is why you can say, I have no idea why I'm terrified of blank or why blank triggers me, because you don't know why. Your brain doesn't know why, right? Your body isn't being irrational. It's running a pattern matching algorithm, right? It's based on decades of stored experiences. That tone of voice sounds like the tone that preceded criticism in a previous relationship, or that facial expression maps to disapproval from your parent. That silence, that specific quality of silence matches the quiet before a conflict that your 7-year-old self learned to dread. You're not overreacting in these situations. Your nervous system is over-referencing. It's pulling data from every threatening experience you've ever had and then cross-checking it against the present moment. And when it finds a match, even a partial one, it responds, not to what's happening right now, but to what happened then. It's matching patterns. So if it figures out that this situation is similar in feeling or tone or situational awareness that a previous situation was, it's going to react in the way that should have kept you safe in that previous situation. So this is why the same situation can feel perfectly manageable on a good day and then completely overwhelming on a hard one. It's not the situation itself that changed. It's your nervous system's ability to perceive its available bandwidth for processing it. So on a day when you're regulated, right? You're resourced, you're doing good, you've got capacity, your system can run the pattern matching and say, this looks like the old thing, but it's not the old thing. On a day when you're completely depleted, it doesn't have the bandwidth or capacity for that nuance. It matches the pattern and then responds accordingly. So what do you actually do with all of this information, right? If you're a nerd like me, you find it fascinating. But as we've talked about, insight doesn't equal action. So the first thing you're going to do is stop blaming yourself for your reactions. They make sense. You're not irrational. You're not overreacting. Every single one of your reactions makes sense. Your anger makes sense. Your shutdown makes sense. Your people-pleasing makes sense, right? Your inability to rest makes sense. These aren't character flaws. They're a nervous system strategy that was built under specific conditions. Knowing that doesn't make them disappear, but it does stop you from adding another layer of shame on top of a system that's already overloaded. Second is you start noticing your state before trying to change it. Before you reach for a tool, any tool, ask yourself, where am I right now? Am I in shutdown? Am I activated? Am I actually in a place where this particular practice can work for me? Right? This is orientation. And it's the single most underrated skill in all of trauma recovery. You can't navigate it if you don't know your location. Third is expect the messy middle. When you start coming out of shutdown, things will feel worse before they feel better. But that's not a reason to not do it. Emotions will come back online without a filter, and you'll feel things you haven't felt in decades maybe. And unfortunately, they don't arrive gently, right? That's the ember. That's your system thawing. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. It means something's starting to move. And that's what moves you into the flame. And the flame can hurt too, but it needs to burn away all of the things that are no longer serving you because they were no longer for a you that exists now. They were for a you that's only goal in life was to survive, right? And fourth is trust the cycle. You will return to the ashes. You will. And it's not because you failed, because that's not how the nervous system works. It cycles. The goal isn't to prevent the return. The goal is to recognize it when it happens and give yourself what that state actually needs instead of fighting it. So I know that's a lot of science for right now, but I think it matters. When you understand the machine you're living in, you stop fighting it. You stop treating your body like the enemy and start treating it like the most loyal system you've ever had. Because it is. It's kept you alive through everything. It's done and doing its job. And now your job is to give it the updated information so it can do its job better, differently, more efficiently for the environment you're in now. And that's what this work is. It's not fixing or updating. It's not healing backwards. It's integrating forwards. If you want the full picture, the science, the framework, the story of how I figured all of this out, the book is Spiraling into Control. And it'll be available on February 27th, wherever books are sold. And the community is at laurentoby.com/connect. And it's where these conversations keep going. This episode may be over, but our time together doesn't have to be. You can join the community and keep the conversation going with women who get it. No performing, just real, honest truth. Now, next week, I'm going to talk about something that I think is going to hit close to home for a lot of people. And that's what happens when the person you built your survival strategies around is gone. And you're still running those same survival strategies on that same old playbook. And what happens when the threat finally leaves, but those patterns stay? If this has helped you, or you know someone that it can help, please follow or subscribe or do whatever app you're listening on asks you to do. Please leave us a rating and a review because that's how this message gets out to more people. And share it with someone who popped into your head while you were listening to it. That's how you can support this work. Give me a follow or subscribe or whatever it is and help support getting this message out to the community that you're not broken. You are just living in a body that adapted to a previous environment. All right, I'll see you next week.